this was a bold choice for hair today, but my hair was touching me and it was driving me nuts. So thanks you guys for your patience. A lot of you were so sweet and you're like, when's the next pod and everything. I only released the one in January and this will come out today, which is still January. So we're still doing good. We took a little winter break. So today is going to be all things cruise ship. So crazy cruise ship write-ins. I'm going to tell you some of my own crazy cruise ship stories. And then we're going to go over like all the workings of cruise ships and some of the maritime disasters in the past like 10 years. It was like a deep dive and I honestly found it fascinating and I think you will too. It's a fun listen for sure. So welcome back to Girl Hacked. Today I'm going hard on a cruise deep dive. Out in the open ocean, things don't always stay calm. From disappearances and disasters to secrets the cruise lines don't advertise. This is the podcast that dives into the craziest things that have ever happened on cruise ships, plus the stats and inner workings behind the floating cities at sea. So before we get started, just a little check-in here. As I said, we just went on a cruise, and this one we had they had a code that they were saying over the intercom that nobody knew what it meant. And I Googled it when I got home. I'll be going into that. And then we had 2 times they turned around, like when we were coming back from the Bahamas. We were probably 3 hours out, and they were like, we're turning back around. We have to take a medical patient and dump them off there. And we're like, okay. And then they did it again in Fort Lauderdale. So we were just like, what is going on this cruise? Like people are, and I think I told you guys this, but the mortician told me that people die on cruise ships all the time. It's very common. He's like, hey, you have 3, 4, 5, 6, some of the new Royal Caribbean cruises have 7,000 people on board. So he's like, 6 people dying, fairly common. He's like, they do have morgues on board and deep freezers for the bodies. And he's like, usually, they kind of work with the families. Sometimes they leave them at a port or sometimes they just bring them back to the original place that they left. I thought it was insane. But then I was like, yeah, people are drinking heavily. A lot of these people are senior citizens, like pretty crazy. So let's dive in. We actually, when we got back to, I was like getting really interested in Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay, I've always said it's Caribbean. And then when I was watching it, they're like Caribbean. And I was like, okay. So now I feel like a fool because I hate when people say Italian dressing. Like it's Italian dressing. It's Italy, Italian. So they're like Italian dressing, but this was like that for me. I was like Caribbean. And I thought I was like, and they're like Caribbean on the movie. So I was like, I don't know. Anyway, we watched the first one. Incredible movie. I was like, this show's so good. We've never watched them all. Let's watch them all. And after the first one, pretty horrendous, pretty horrible, especially with Davy Jones and that weird like octopus guy. We were just like, we're not feeling it. I want to see it through though. I want to finish all of them. And Justin's like, no, we got to stop while we're ahead. Like we have one life to live. We're wasting it on the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th Pirates of the Caribbean. And I'm like, yeah, I have to. I like have to finish something once I start though. Books, everything. But the movies are pretty bad. Like right now we're just like, 20 minutes at a time is all we can really do. And then another thing that just recently happened was I got the brick device. So I'd heard a bunch of other like other influencers, I'm looping myself in with that, and podcasters and people saying they love the brick. So the brick is this small little magnetic square. You download the app. There's no crazy setup or anything. And it's so bizarre because you like take sorry about that sound. You take the back of your phone and you just click like brick device and you select what you want brick to. So it's not like, it doesn't lock you out of everything. I keep text messages, emails, Pinterest, and Kindle open, but it mainly goes through like your social things. So it's like, oh, you still want to listen to music, but you don't want to be on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. So you hold the device up and it's just magnetic. It says your device is now bricked. And then when you want to unbrick, you just fold it back up and click unbrick. Now, when I'd heard them talk about it, they were saying the same thing. They were like, this is so dumb because like, why don't you just go put your phone in the room and leave it? Why don't you just go? There is definitely a science to this and it makes no sense, but it works. So like, I would lock myself out of stuff. And recently, I think I've shared this with you guys. This kind of sucks, but as I've gotten, millions of views on videos on Instagram and TikTok, I do feel like TikTok, well, I guess they're both pretty toxic, but I've gotten some death threats. I've gotten some weird DMs from people. And sometimes it gets to you, sometimes it doesn't. Like, it depends on what it is. Usually now I just like block people, but like I'll get like this like yucky feeling if it's like something scary from some gross man. And I can just brick. And I was also spending too much time on my phone at night because as I'm like posting on the podcast, then it's like I have to post my podcast and upload to all those platforms, post the video to YouTube, post on TikTok and Instagram every day. It's a lot. So I was just spending too much time and I kind of like took a step back and it was incredible. And it's so stupid because I keep the brick in my nightstand. So like at night, I've noticed that instead of like Like, it's literally right there. I could just open the door and unbrick. But I'm like, oh, do I want to open myself up to that world right now? It's probably not a good idea before bed, you know? And going into the new year, how everybody's getting slammed with like skinny, fit, like skinny, 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 like go back to the gym. If that's triggering to you and it's not working for you and it's not what you're aligning with or your goals for the future, whatever it is that you're seeing, you know, that's triggering to you, definitely don't consume it at night. That's not going to be good. But it's just funny because I'll go on Pinterest now and it's such a relaxing thing to do. You're like organizing things into little boards and categories. You're looking at pretty pictures. You're looking at recipes you want to try. I think it's a really healthy platform. And so I've been loving that. And then I've been loving just like my Kindle too. Like once I'm bored on Pinterest, I'm like, I go on my Kindle and I read every night. Like it just got me right back in my reading thing. So I'm back to like my 2-3 books a month, which is incredible. So I love the brick. I think it was like $50. And I was like, that's kind of expensive. Like, just put your phone away. No, it's like a life-changing device. And what's funny too is if you don't have the thing to unclick it, you can't unbrick yourself unless you use like your emergency unbricks. So like virtually. So like if I drove somewhere and I was like, oh shoot, I wanted this open today and I forgot to unbrick before I left the house. You can use an emergency unbrick, but there's been times I left the house and I was like, oh, normally I'd be like posting my coffee to Instagram or something. Instead, I'm just like in the moment. I really love it. So I love the brick. Okay, so let's start with the stats of cruise ships, okay? And we are getting to the most insane stories you guys have ever heard. And I'm telling some of my own funny ones. You're going to love it. But like, bear with me through this. And if you really don't want to and you want to listen to stories, fast forward. But I'm going to do like cruise ship stats, break it up with some stories, and then back to the cruise ship stats and some like staggering things you guys wouldn't know. They're crazy. Okay, so sewage and wastewater, just starting off strong. A large cruise ship produces 30 gallons of sewage, which is the black water per day, plus 250,000 gallons of gray water, shower, sinks, laundry per day. Waste is treated on board, filtered, disinfected, and then discharged 12 plus nautical miles from shore. So the cleaning turnaround too. So that's kind of weird. I didn't know they could just like pump it back into the ocean after they do that. Now we'll get into this, but there are some cruise ships that were just dumping without doing anything. They were like forging documents and they got fined a shit ton of money. So cleaning and turnaround, average turnaround time. This is for the entire ship. And I have wondered this because I'm like, well, let's see, they port at 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. And then people usually aren't off until 9 or something. And then like you can select your time to get on the ship between 11 and 12 for the next cruise. What do you mean? So average turnaround time is 4 to 8 hours to unload, clean, and reload 4,000 to 6,000 passengers. 1,000 crew members involved in cleaning per day. Every cabin is stripped, sanitized, and reset, including mattresses sprayed and carpets vacuumed with HEPA systems. So I'm going to get into so much about cruising, but we always were like, we're never going to be cruise people. Cruises are disgusting, whatever. And then we went on 2 that were actually incredible. And not only were they incredible because we realized why we didn't like our last cruise, okay? So our first cruise was in Europe, and waking up in a different country every day is pretty incredible. It takes all that stress out of travel and getting flights or renting a car. You just literally get to see like 6 countries at a time, and there's no at-sea days. So for that cruise, there was no like weird, like, should we just go, up to the cesspool that is the pool and hot tub? Or, we just woke up, we spent the entire day in a new country, came back, ate some food, went to bed. Like, it was insane. And the excursions that they had on those were expensive, but incredible, life-changing experiences. We loved it. Second cruise was the same. We went to Mexico, and the 2 excursions we did a camel excursion where we went 1 hour to a private beach in Cabo. Literally no one on this pristine beach but us. Rode the camels, had this catered dinner, like tequila tasting. It was one of the most incredible experiences ever. And it was a rescue camel retreat. So the camels only worked like a couple days a week, and they were super friendly. The camels love their trainers, which was a great sign. And then we went to like a dairy and did a cheese tasting in an actual cave. Like you walk down the stairs into this cave and there was like little candles lit everywhere, and you can see the cheese behind the glass doors like molding and being disgusting back there. And then they bring out the cheese to taste, and you have some wine, and like this little family farm. Like it was insane. It was so fun. So here's what we didn't like about this one. We went to the Bahamas, and there was 2 like at-sea days technically because we had some weather stuff and we couldn't port at one of the locations. Day in the Bahamas, incredible. Best weather ever. Other 2 days, garbage, shit, trash weather. Like, we couldn't even go up to, like, the pools and hot tubs. And I was just like, and they didn't have the hibachi restaurant on this one, which, ugh. But we were just kind of like, So we figured something out, but we actually loved it. Like, um, I don't know. We became cruise people, kind of. So one of the things we were talking about, obviously, that people always question is like the lifeboat situation, because you see them on the side of the ship and you're like, those are small and there's a million people on here. So what do you mean? And Justin's like, no, they have to have lifeboats for everyone now, per the Titanic. But what we learned was the lifeboats must hold 125 to 150% of passengers and crew. Now, so we've got above and beyond, right? Not just 100%, 125 to 150. Here's why. Some of those lifeboats they're planning on not working because they're like fully enclosed and fully motorized. And think about it. What do they put those on once and then like probably the cruise ship is never going to sink. So in 25 years, if something happens, they have to get people off. Like some of those won't even work or be viable. And it wasn't just lifeboats. So they're counting in that 125 to 150%. That includes rafts. So you're telling me they're probably going to put the crew on the rafts, right? They're going to get the people off and be like, the crew has to fend it open sea for the rafts. So the modern lifeboats are enclosed, motorized, self-righting, and stocked with water, food, and flares. The entire ship must be able to launch lifeboats in under 30 minutes by international maritime law. So yeah, we're including rafts in that number. I don't like that. And we're going to get to why it's dangerous to actually get on the lifeboats in the first place. That was something that I found fascinating. So food consumption. Per a 7-day cruise, they go through 30,000 eggs, 10,000 pounds of potatoes. That was mainly for me. 5,000 pounds of beef, 2,000 gallons of ice cream, and the ships load multiple semi-trucks worth of food for every single sailing. The food waste is 8 pounds of food waste per passenger per day. The food waste is dehydrated or pulped on board and then offloaded at a port or processed into a slurry for disposal. Some ships now use, this was cool, AI cameras to track what food gets thrown away. They're trying to like save money and be a little more environmentally friendly, but probably more saving money. But we were talking about the food waste and like how gross and how sad it is, and some of these people from third world countries are working on these ships. And it's just like, how disgusting do you feel? You're just like getting plate after plate and you're like, I don't like that. That's gross, and just like wasting all this food. But if you're not eating the food, like we don't really do that either. So like what we do is everybody loves a buffet every now and then. There's definitely some good stuff in the buffet. And that depends on the cruise line too. Like I've heard Carnival's is pretty nasty. Royal Caribbean, we've always liked most of the like buffet food, but we usually do the main dining room. So that's where you like can get dressed up every night. You have the same waiter that knows you and you know them. And you go sit it's a slower paced dinner and it's better quality food. And then we'll also do some of the nights where you go to the steakhouse that costs extra or the hibachi that costs extra. And so you can definitely get really good quality food on the ship. Now, when we were in Europe, do you think we were eating on the cruise ship? No. We're getting like coffee in the morning, maybe some fruit, and then we're going to go out and eat in France all day or whatever, and then come back. The problem with that is you're still wasting food because they're assuming that we're going to eat whatever amounts of food. So all the food we're not eating is still getting wasted. So that kind of sucks, So if a ship has 5,000 people on board, like we were talking about with the evacuation system, sorry, I just like bopped right around to that. They have 5,000 people on board. They must have a life-saving capacity for 6,275 people. But again, that includes inflatable life rafts and the big slide chutes. Like all this stuff is like, the math isn't quite mathing, is it? Plus, how spooky would that be if they start like offloading the lifeboats and like, oh, that one's a dud, that one's a dud. Like, oh, so crazy. That extra 20, I already told you guys that. Okay. So here's the part that sounds wrong, but isn't. No one gets their own lifeboat. You're assigned to a muster station and not a specific seat. So people are distributed across any available lifeboat or raft. So depending on the size of your family, you could be separated from your family during something like that. And then they also have the common myths, like there are no lifeboats for everyone. That's false on modern day ships. However, like we said, different types of life-saving gear. So between the year 2000 and 2019, an estimated 623 passengers and crew died on cruises worldwide. Most of these were from natural or medical causes, accidents and overboard incidents. Over that period, fewer than 10 major cruise ship sinkings occurred, and the risk of dying of a cruise sinking is extremely low compared to other risks. Now, I was like, 10 major cruise ship sinkings? That's actually kind of startling. That's a lot. We'll go into them though. Now, fall overboard deaths account for a large share of onboard fatalities when they do happen, because most of them are going to pass away, unfortunately. One study suggested cruise ship fatality rates are comparable to or even lower than some land travel modes when adjusted for passengers versus miles. So crazy illegal things they've done and fines. So Princess Cruise Lines, which is part of the Carnival Corporation, was fined $40 million in 2016 because they pleaded guilty to illegally dumping oily contaminated waste at sea, and then they falsified the records to conceal it. That was the largest ever penalty. And then $20 million, they got another one for violating their earlier probation by dumping plastics and food waste again and falsifying training logs. That was in 2019. So we got 2016, 3 years later, they're doing the same shit. Like, I wonder who was like in charge of that. Like, was this just someone on board that was super lazy, or was this them as a whole? Like, they all kind of knew what was going on. Now we're going to get into the infamous poop cruise, which is the Carnival Triumph in 2013. So we're not going to go crazy into it. I know there's a documentary about it. I watched it. It was wild. If you guys have seen it, it definitely spooks you. Like, what if this happened? But there were some things that I saw that I was like, hello, what do you mean they were floating at sea for days? Get those people off of there. Let me tell you why. One of the most notorious cruise disasters wasn't a shipwreck. It was a sanitation collapse. A fire in the engine room on the Carnival Triumph knocked out the main ship's power, disabling sewage systems, toilets, air conditioning, and refrigeration for days while the ship drifted in the Gulf of Mexico. Passengers were forced to urinate in showers and defecate in biohazard bags, which filled the cabins and hallways. Reports described very unsanitary conditions, including a gruesome pile described as poop lasagna. So some people were literally going out in the halls, shitting, and just like stacking it on top of each other. Like, are we being serious right now? So the poop lasagna situation, like, can you imagine literally like, and how hard would that have been for little kids and families? You know, they're like, poop in this little bag, and then I'm gonna tie it up and put it out in the hall. And the crew having to deal with this, having to walk down a hall full of people's like bags of shit. So anyway, with temperatures rising, many passengers slept on deck to escape the smell. Food supplies dwindled as refrigeration failed. The ordeal lasted 5 days before the ship was towed back. So obviously we're thinking, hello, evacuation, like get me a lifeboat. I'm going to dive off the side of the ship to escape this. Basically what happened was mass evacuation at sea is more dangerous than leaving people on board unless the ship is actually sinking or on fire. So evacuating 4,000 people would have required dozens of ships arriving at the same time, calm seas, which that's pretty crazy when you think about it. What if you're like in a crazy storm and then like the ship's sinking and the seas aren't calm and they're like, well, we can't send all those boats out there. A little spooky when you think about it. Passengers climbing down ladders or lifeboats for hours, and a huge risk of people falling, boats colliding, or capsizing. Excuse me? So maritime law treats evacuation as a very last resort. So the ship was floating, structurally stable, and no longer on fire. So keeping them on board was considered a safer option. It drifted for 5 days because the engine room knocked out the propulsion, so the ship lost all the main engines and it could not move under its own power. Towing a cruise ship is incredibly slow. It said the Carnival Triumph weighed 100,000 tons. Only certain tugboats are powerful enough, and early tugs weren't strong enough to tow it against the current. So they did send them out and they couldn't tow them. Power was limited, so emergency generators kept lights and basic navigation, but not air conditioning, sewage, elevators, or refrigeration. Also, the elevator situation, like what if you were in a wheelchair? That's crazy. Logistics, not neglect. So helicopters brought food and smaller boats delivered supplies, but you can't airlift thousands of people off a ship. Off a ship efficiently. So the brutal reality was that it was safer than the lifeboats themselves, and unless they were taking on water, they weren't going to get them. So they said a floating ship with a working hull is safer than thousands of people at sea. Okay, let's get into the average deaths on the cruise ships, okay? Like they said, I gave you the numbers for like the last few years, but analysts estimate about 150 to 200 deaths per year worldwide on cruise ships. And they're not always reported consistently, so they think there's quite a bit more, but like that's not that much really when you think about it, like worldwide. So what happens is they do a medical confirmation. So the ship's doctor officially pronounces the death, the time, location, and circumstances are documented, the cabin is secured, and then if the death is suspicious, the area becomes a controlled scene. Ship security takes statements, evidence is preserved, and authorities are notified. Often the FBI if it's U.S.-linked sailing. Now, obviously, if you've seen Amy Bradley or that recent one that we're going to go into, they went in and cleaned that whole goddamn room. And that's spooky, spooky. Because the fact that you're in international waters, it affects so many things. And like legally, like they can't even, like you go online, they could have wiped all the evidence. So the bodies are stored in the ship's morgue. Cruise ships have a small morgue, usually holding between 2 and 10 bodies. Bodies are placed in refrigerated compartments. The morgue space is limited. So if there's a serious illness or multiple deaths, then they use their other freezer systems. Yikes. If the morgue is full, they may be placed in a temporary refrigerator space, like I just said, but that can happen during long voyages or outbreaks. When the body is removed from the ship, they usually go to the next suitable port. They coordinate with the local authorities, port health officials, and funeral services. The family decides where they're going to, like what home they're going to take them to, and if they're going to do a local burial or a cremation. And usually this is all handled through traveler's insurance if you have it. What happens to the cabin if someone dies in there? Oh, when I was thinking about that, I was like, yeah, I don't think any of us are, like, I was like, oh, someone like got too drunk, fell, whatever. No, what if it was in like the bed you just like, and that turnaround 4 to 8 hours and you're in the room of a dead guy, please. So it said the cabin is deep cleaned, personal belongings are inventoried and returned to the family. The cabin may be taken out of service or quietly reassigned later in the cruise. This does happen. What do you mean quietly reassigned? Like if they come in my room and they're like, hey, do you want to go to this other room that we just like deep cleaned? Like, what do you mean? Why would you reassign it mid-cruise? The taken out of service option, I think, is the best way to go. What do other passengers see when this happens? Usually nothing. No shipwide announcements, the crew is trained to be discreet, and the body transport happens at night via service elevators away from public areas. Ooh. Many passengers never realize a death occurred on board. So let's get into the crew. And then we've got pretty soon we're going to get into some of the stories. The crew, this made me so sad. So pay varies wildly by role, cruise line, and nationality, so entry-level housekeeping and galley staff, they're usually making $600 to $1,200 a month, sometimes plus tips, which is like, what do you mean sometimes? Officers, specialized staff, and senior crew make $2,000 to $6,000 a month. Tips are a big part of income for many positions like servers, bartenders, and the stewards that clean your cabin. Food, housing, and sometimes laundry are free on board. So net pay is slightly higher than it looks. But I cross-referenced all of this to be like, okay, but $600 American dollars versus where they live and where they, no, they're still making very low minimum wage. We're going to get into how awful this is too. Many crew work 6 to 7 days a week for contracts of 6 to 9 months. Some positions only get 1 day off per month. And those days are for paperwork, training, or cleaning tasks. So these people that are working their butts off for us, they might go 6 to 9 months of working 6 days a week, possibly 7. And then what? They usually go home for a couple weeks and do another turnaround and sign up for another cruise. That is horrific. Crew cabins are tiny. They usually only have 4 to 6. They usually have 4 to 6 people in a room. Breaks are strictly scheduled, but it's only 30 to 45 minutes per shift. And again, they can get away with this because international waters. So it doesn't matter where the cruise ship ported from. It matters like where the cruise company is based out of. So they will often base their companies out of places where the labor laws are horrible, so they can get away with stuff, which is really sad. Turnaround periods on those, the crew works 16 to 18-hour days. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Then it said sleeping shifts are usually only between 1 and 4:30 a.m. Excuse me? Is this Squid Game? Like 1 and 4:30 a.m. for 6 to 9 months. This is horrific. It made me so sad. They rely heavily on tips, especially for dining and the housekeeping staff, like I said. The cruise ship companies often come from countries like the Philippines, Indonesia, India, and Eastern Europe. So here's the breakdown. If the cruise ships are registered in a flag state country like Panama, Bahamas, Liberia, etc., it's not the country where the ship operates, but it's where the cruise is headquartered. Ships follow the labor and maritime laws of the flag state, even when they're in international waters. Once a ship is beyond 12 miles from the shore, it's international waters. Enforcement is tricky. Inspectors can't board randomly in the middle of the ocean. So inspecting and making sure the crew's conditions are right or they're not overworked, that's like doesn't happen. Many crew are from Asia and developing countries, and the cost of living differences, like when I told you, it doesn't really add up. And then they do that contract work. So they're working so much. And then the other thing was that, what else was I going to tell you about the crew? Okay. Anyway, so we're going to go through some big news stories, and then we'll get into the write-ins, okay? So this is a story of a cruise stalker. So on an 8-day cruise on the Regal Princess out of Galveston, Texas, passenger Stephanie Schilperut reported being harassed and stalked by another guest during the voyage. She said the incidents began on the first night at the ship's casino bar. He came up and said some explicit things to me and touched my arm and chest before he walked away, she told a local news station. She then encountered the same man again later that day in the cruise. He got into the elevator with me and touched me again with sexual comments. Like, can you imagine reporting this to the cruise and they're not holding him down in the jail in the brig? Are you kidding me? Get him out of here. Hang on, gotta take a little touch of water. So she reported the behavior to the ship's security multiple times during the cruise. Like, at this point, I'm going to be like, no, I'm getting off at the next port and you're flying for me to go home free, because that's crazy. So then she was told that law enforcement would meet the ship when it was docked in Galveston, but no officers were present when they arrived. So after disembarking, she contacted the police. The case was referred to the FBI, which confirmed jurisdiction, but later declined to comment. Other passengers gave conflicting accounts of what they saw on board, and it was described as they saw a loud verbal exchange, and then it was handled by security. So nothing happened to this guy, basically, which is super scary. And then between 2023 and 2025, there was a case targeting and secret observation of passengers that resembled obsessive predatory behavior. So what happened was the Royal Caribbean Symphony of the Seas became the center of a federal case after a stateroom attendant was found to have placed hidden cameras in passenger cabins and bathroom areas, capturing many guests, adults and minors, without their consent. This is what's crazy too, because you're like, okay, we have to get, like, I mean, I hate to say it after I'm saying the cruise treated horribly, but like, why were they allowed to bring like recording devices on the ship? Like, you weren't going through their luggage before and after, and like, I don't know. So victims were not individually named in all the reports, but the case sparked a class action lawsuit. And basically, the lawyers argued that a crew member spied on as many as 900 passengers, including children. So, filming them in private space with those hidden cameras, his name was Arvin Joseph Mirasol, and he was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison on child pornography charges. And then passengers from the U.S. joined the lawsuits against Royal Caribbean. And basically, they said, like, this was an oversight of staff, and how could this have gone undetected, which is kind of crazy. And also, I wonder how it was found, because I'm like, that would have to be one tiny camera. I don't know. Like the toilets, it said one of the cameras was like pointed at the toilet in the shower, and then there was like one by the bed. That's pretty spooky. And also, what if, like, I guess the stateroom people have, the stewards have like their own rooms, but I wonder like how someone else maybe would have never gone in the room to see it. I don't know. Okay, now there was a homicide aboard the Carnival cruise, and this just happened in November of 2025. So this was Anna Kepner. In early November 2025, 18-year-old Anna Kepner from Florida was found dead aboard the Carnival Horizon cruise ship during a family vacation. Her body was wrapped in a blanket and hidden under a bed covered with life jackets. Family members described the harrowing details. I know she fought for her life, so it's rough. It's rough, her aunt said. Investigators ruled the death as a homicide caused by mechanical asphyxiation, suggesting manual strangulation. Bruising on her neck indicated a forceful hold. Anna had been sharing the cabin with her 16-year-old stepbrother at the time, and he has been identified as a person of interest by the FBI, though no formal charges have been yet announced. Okay? Authorities in Miami have been cooperating with the cruise line and family, but dispatch of the suspect charges have been delayed amid ongoing forensic analysis. Because this occurred in international waters, the FBI is involved. Maritime homicides often fall under their jurisdiction, and the investigation remains active and unresolved publicly as of late. So hopefully they're getting somewhere on this, but I was like, this, how many people could it really have been? And the other thing I was noticing when we were in the cruise, I was like, okay, there's a camera there, but if you go around a corner, there's literally no cameras in sight. So unless there's really good hidden cameras, which I doubt, you can't see what's like going on around a corner. And then also like the cards, like they're like, they can see when you went in and out of your room, but anybody could have your key card, right? But I'm like, she's sharing with her creepy stepbrother. Like, it's, come on. I'm just bugged that, like, and again, hopefully this is one of those things where they already know who it is, like the Idaho guy, like they already knew who it was, and like we, the public, just don't know. But it's really sad. Like, she's so young. She goes on a freaking cruise with her family and ends up, I'm like, under the bed. Oh, it gives me chills. I hate it. Okay, now we're going to 2025, an incident on July 16th, an overboard incident. So there was a cruise in the Baltic Sea toward Copenhagen. An 18-year-old passenger went overboard at 2 a.m. The ship immediately sounded the man overboard alarm and turned back to the last seen location. The rescue details that the speed and wind force, they reduced speed amid wind force 6 and delayed search and deployed search boats and spotlights. The ship requested passengers illuminate the sea with mobile phones. And it says increasing visibility. I mean, maybe if you had 4,000 mobile phones out there, like on their thing, but I was like, that seems really weird. Like, they're not that bright, guys. And they said that he spent from 2 to 4 a.m. in the water. So through the combined vigilance of crew and passengers, the individual was located, retrieved from the water, and brought back aboard in a responsive condition. So that was a good one, and that just barely happened. I'm going to go through some more. Here's the crazy thing. So I learned that the cruise ships, because you're like, oh, someone goes overboard. If someone like sees it, come on, they're going to just like jump, they're going to immediately stop, turn around. That's not the case. They actually have to get approval to stop. And I'm like thinking like, oh yeah, the sea is probably like, air traffic control kind of, but I've never been on a cruise ship and like seen another cruise ship out in the open water anywhere near us, which is also pretty unsettling. And so it's just like, they say that usually, and when you think about it, it's always like the Coast Guard bound or another ship that was like on that location, because for them to like fully stop or even turn around, A, they have to get approval, B, they have to have the capabilities to do it, and C, I honestly think they don't care about one person going overboard when there's like, 7,000 people are going to be like crazy raging. Did you guys love that? My naggy voice, it's so bad. Okay, this one sent me because I was like, of course, slay Disney. So child and father went overboard June 29th, 2025 on the Disney Dream. So a young girl fell overboard from the Disney Dream as it was returning to Port Everglades, Fort Lauderdale after a Bahamas cruise. Her father immediately jumped in after to try and save her. Life rings were thrown, rescue boats launched, and navigation bridge officers coordinated the emergency response. The outcome was the child and her father were recovered alive and returned to the vessel in stable condition. Now get this. They spent 20 to 30 minutes only in the water, and the Disney Cruise line later confirmed the cruise emergency protocols worked as designed and both were fine. Come on, Disney. They are just on it. But I also was thinking like, okay, so first of all, they were really close to the port. I'm sure that changed things. Second of all, a child went overboard, which they're going to be like, we can't have a kid die. We got to go after him. And kudos to the dad for just like I would totally jump into open water after Sadie, no question asked. But I thought that was pretty crazy. I was like, wow, that was like no time at all in the water. And then here was the best one. This one literally sent me. So this was 2022, and this was James Michael Grimes' 20-hour ordeal in the Gulf of Mexico. 20 hours in the water. Okay, you ready? He was aboard the Carnival of Valor the night before Thanksgiving when he went overboard somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico. He was 28 years old from Lafayette, Alabama, and remembers winning an air guitar contest in one of the ship's lounges that evening, then telling his sister he was going to the bathroom later that night. Now, what I heard, don't quote me on this, but I heard that he got like super intoxicated. And then his family, when they didn't hear from him the next day, like he wasn't reported missing until like noon the next day. Because they're like, oh, he's drunk, he's sleeping it off. And then nobody hears from him. Now, here's what I was thinking. These newer ships, what are you talking about? Like, it did say some of them have like better detection, but like What do you mean there's not a camera? And if someone falls into the water, it's not like ring, 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 like alerts immediately. There's so many cameras everywhere. Wouldn't there be some detection system for that? And it's like, yeah, the older ones know. And you have to think about it. These cruise ships cost so much. They keep them in circulation for like a million years. I bet if the Titanic never sunk, it'd still be in circulation. So, like, what are you talking about? Like, we got to update this. That's like pretty crazy. So, this is what he said though. He went over and then he was like knocked unconscious. Get this. Next thing I know, I regained consciousness. I was in the water with no boat in sight. This is the middle of the night. And I sent a video to my friend who's like, I could never get on a cruise, spooky, spooky. I could never. So, middle of the day, you go out. So, like, you see the other ships when you're like leaving. And then, like, fairly soon, you think, like, I don't know what people think, but maybe this is just me. But my first cruise, I was like, oh, we're going to see like other boats like in the distance. There is no one around. There's not even another boat that you can see. You can't see land. You can't see a city. You can't see anything. So, you're just out there and you're like, oh, okay, there's like literally no one. And during the day, you look down off your balcony and you're like, oh, how pretty the ocean. Like, and then like at twilight, so I sent her one daytime right before dark and then dark. She was like, woo, and it is super spooky. So you go up out on your balcony at night. It is pitch black water. You can see no lights in the skyline. You can see no other cruise ships. You can see no other boats. It is black water 360. You can see no one. And you're just like, what if I went off and fell off into this cruise? And also around the cruise ship, there's like a couple little lights, but they're not like illuminating the water really or anything underneath. It's black water because it's nighttime. And I'm just like, imagine falling off and then waking up in that and being like, huh? And again, he didn't even see the cruise ship when he woke up. So it was so far that like he woke up floating in the middle of the ocean at nighttime. Are you kidding me? Okay, just wait. It's so good. So he went overboard. He doesn't remember how he went overboard. He believes he may have passed out before falling, but the first thing he recalls is waking up in the ocean without the ship around him. Okay, once in the water, Grimes treaded water for nearly 20 hours before he was found, battling exhaustion, currents, exposure, and wildlife. He fought jellyfish sting after jellyfish sting while trying to stay afloat, and he said he also encountered a large sea creature and one shark. So I'm just sitting here being like, okay, let's just pretend for 1 second you fall off a cruise ship, okay? Daytime, that's one thing. It's still spooky. But like you fall off and you wake up and it's black water and you don't know how you fell off. And I'm like, the worst part of that would be unfucking yourself in your head. The entire time you'd have to spend being like, I may not make it out of this. I may die, but if I want to live, I better like keep calm and do stuff. He did say like a little twig floated by him or something. He was like chewing on it to keep himself. But here's my thing. A jellyfish stings me. I don't know what that feels like. I've never stung. I'm going to assume a shark bit half of my leg off. I think you'd be so in shock that any like ouch, sting, bite, you'd be like, oh my God, completely panicking. Then the other thing is, what do you mean you encountered a shark? He said something large like bumped him and he could feel it. And he's like, I don't know if it was a whale, whatever, but he did see a shark like during the day that was like kind of circling by him. And I'm like, what if he like knocked his head when he went off and he was like bleeding from somewhere too? But I'm like, literally imagine just laying there. So you're treading water, you're floating, you're trying to keep yourself calm. And the whole time you're like, there could be a shark right under me just waiting to like take a chunk out of my back. I can't take this. I literally, so I sent this video to my friend and she's like, what do you mean? Like the water is completely black, I was like, yeah, it's pretty bad. Okay, so he said, I wanted to see my family and I was dead set on making it out of there. I was never accepting that this was it, that this was going to be the end of my life. So like we said, you want to make it out? You can. You totally can if you have like the will to live and you're like, don't have some crazy accident with the shark, but like that would be insane keeping my brain okay for that. Like I would definitely come out a nutcase, have to be medicated for the rest of my life. He said he stayed positive by singing to himself and focusing on survival while floating in shark and jellyfish-infested waters. Okay, so how they got him. After hours in the water, the Coast Guard helicopter crew located him 20 miles south of Louisiana just before 8:30 p.m. the next day. And he said when the Coast Guard coordinator said, Mr. Grimes had nothing left. He had no energy. He had nothing left to give. I'd say he had about a minute or so before we would have lost him completely. Grimes was airlifted to safety, then hospitalized. He spent several days in intensive care, but ultimately survived with no major long-term physical injuries. After he shared, it was a 20-hour baptism that drew me closer to God. I know that God saved me for a reason. Why did the guy say he only had a minute or so left? I get so sick of hearing that. They're like, oh my God, another hour and you would have been dead. Another, like, whatever. How do you really know that? How do you know he only had a minute left? Like, I don't know. He had no flotation device, radio, or flares. Duh. Why did they even include that in the article? Like, just went overboard with a flare? Where would you even get that? Okay, the fact that the ship, a Carnival cruise, wasn't immediately nearby when he entered the water made his rescue even more extraordinary. So they said a Carnival cruise, but see, Disney has come to the rescue of other ships and vice versa. So I'm like, couldn't some other ship get him? Okay, here's some strange mysteries. You ready? So the first one is Rebecca Corium, Disney Wonder ship in March of 2011. She was a youth activities crew member, and the route was the Pacific coast near Mexico. Rebecca, 24, disappeared during an early morning shift. CCTV footage shows her talking on a phone, appearing distressed, and saying, yeah, fine, when asked if she was okay. That footage is the last confirmed sighting. And again, CCTV shows her talking on the phone. Where'd she go after that? Like, they did say with the Amy Bradley case, they think the cruise ship, like, covered up some stuff or maybe deleted footage. And, like, they're in international waters. They're based out here. They can do whatever they want. They kind of can. And that's crazy to me that we don't have any more footage of this lady. So Disney ruled it an accidental fall, but no body was recovered, no announcement was made on board, and her family was never allowed to view the full CCTV footage. Her shoes were found on board. Like, spooky. And you don't have a camera of all sides of the ship. Like, there wasn't somewhere where we could see someone go overboard and, like, solve the mystery, see if someone pushed her, see if she jumped. Like, what was that? And what do you mean her family was never allowed to view it? Was the FBI allowed to view it? Because no. Why it's unsolved, Disney never publicly released full details. Like, how can you do that? What do you mean? They said there was inconsistencies in their timelines and no physical evidence of a fall. Okay. Nah. So we are getting to the fun part before we get back to a little more cruise ship tea, but insane write-ins. So I'm going to start with mine. I think this was the second cruise we've been on, so we've only been on 3. So we're in our room at night, and if you know me, I can put up with a lot. I can put up with pain. I can put up with being starving. I can put up with a lot of things. Sleeping, like, turn into a crazy person, instantly angry. Like, so we're asleep. So our family went to bed, and around 3 a.m. we hear, like, this raucous woman just getting she's absolutely drunk, and she apparently was in the room next to us. So we hear him banging down the halls and blah, 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 and she's yelling and she's crazy and she's just going on and on and on. And then they get in the room and she's fighting and she is talking like at a Mach 20. Like, I was enraged. So I wake up and I'm like, she's drunk. She's going to fall asleep. Oh, no. She's yelling. She's screaming. She's playing music on her phone. I was like, I'm going to lose it. And so I love embarrassing Justin. He's so, like, calm and collected. So I yelled, shut it. This is my, like, go-to verbiage so I wake up and I'm like, shut it. And you hear them be quiet, and then there was, like, some more noise or something. Get this. I call from our room to complain, okay? And again, what's weird is, like, I've been on, on all these cruises, like, yeah, occasionally you hear if someone's really loud, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone, like, talking in the next room or anything, like, at a normal volume. So wait. So I call them to complain. They're like, we'll handle it immediately. Thank you. What cabin are they in? And blah, blah, blah. So I hang up the phone in mine. And then we hear their phone ring. We hear them answer it. And, like, they're like, yeah, okay, sorry, yeah. And then so we're like, oh, my God. So they heard me place the call next door. We hear them take the call next door. Then they called us back. And they're like, hey, we've called them. We told them to shut up, whatever, blah, blah. And so, yeah, they probably heard us get the call that they had been, it was so bad. And Justin's like, just, like, tweaking over there. We never saw the rest of the cruise. It was fine. Okay, here's the write-ins. A very elderly man in a wheelchair pulled himself up onto the rail on the top floor overlooking the atrium. He threw himself over the railing and hit the scalloped glass that was on the side of the circular staircase going down. It nearly decapitated him. His wife said he had brain cancer, and his family took the cruise as a last hurrah. He did this act in front of them. I will never forget their screams. Well, starting off with something, like, really crazy and sad. Okay. Hi, Britt. File this story under most entitled thing you've seen on a cruise. Me and my wife have been on literally dozens of cruises and really couldn't think of anything too crazy. Then, a few days after I was talking to her about it, we were on a cruise elevator and a woman got on with a handful of sunflower seeds. Wait, so you must cruise a lot, yeah. Dozens of cruises, and you were on a cruise a few days after this? Okay. Woman got on the elevator with a handful of sunflower seeds and she started cracking them as loudly as possible, which was annoying but fine. But then she was just tossing the shells on the ground. My wife and I were completely shocked. I didn't even think to say anything to her. I really couldn't believe it. And then we get off the elevator and see her. She's just tossing them on the ground as she walks around. We saw her a few more times in the next 7 days doing the same thing. It was the most unhinged thing we've ever seen on a ship. Wow, just leaving a trail behind you. That is actually wild. And like no one's like saying something to her like, hey, that's so rude. This isn't a Texas Roadhouse where you can crack the peanuts under there. Is that Texas Roadhouse or Outback? I wouldn't know because I never get to go. And steakhouses are my favorite. If you're listening to this, Justin, easy Valentine's idea. Don't give me any goddamn flowers. I hate flowers. I want to go to Texas Roadhouse. And because of where I live, that's actually quite a drive. That's a whole romantic date, you know? Okay, ready? This is the write-in. Okay, dude shitting in multiple places on the ship. Yes, he ended up getting removed. That's it. That's the write-in. No hello, hi girl hack podcast. Thank you. Okay, hi Britt. First day of the cruise, literally in the boarding terminal, waiting in line, I see a middle-aged man who looks so unwell, pale as a ghost, sweating just so bad that it resonated in my mind. Later that night at the comedy club, somebody falls over, ends up having a seizure, and turns blue. My wife, a medical professional, goes to help the person until the ship's emergency crew gets there. And you guess it. Same guy saw, the cabin sent a thank you note and a bottle of wine to us, thanking us for my wife's health, and we go on about our trip for the next day. 2 days later, we're at port, drinking tequila from squeezed bottles at Senior Frogs. And who do I see slamming drinks and slurping tequila the entire time we're there? You guessed it, the guy who almost died. Sir. Wow. And he had a seizure and they didn't get him off the boat? Like, I wonder what that was. Either he had a seizure disorder already and then convinced them, but I can't even see them keeping him on the ship after that. Seems like a liability. Get him to land. Turn around. Okay. A couple at the table near ours with each course would chew a few bites, spit the food back on their plates, and then wait for the next course and repeat. This happened every single day. What do you mean? Why are you spitting it back on the plate? That is so gross. And also just like really bad manners. I'm so confused by this. They think it's like fine wine. They're like, this one tastes like garlic. That's so gross. Okay, this isn't as wild as a brawl or anything, but someone shouting at an employee, but we sat next to a woman who went on and on about how much she hates chickpeas. But the garbanzo beans in her salad that she was eating were delicious and she loves them. So that's the same legume, sweetie. Sorry. I believe that garbanzo bean is how they say in Spanish. So I think that's why, like, which can be confusing when you go in the grocery store because they're labeled like garbanzo or chickpea depending on where you go. But yeah, that's the same legume. Sorry. That's hilarious. Here's another weird one like that first one. I swear this is the same person. Guy pissing in the staircase. And that's all they wrote. Yeah. Actually, we've seen this. We've seen this in person. This is the crazy thing ever. So in Salt Lake, there's this Mexican restaurant that has the best food ever. It's called the Red Iguana. And it's in like a really weird part of town. But everyone goes. Everyone knows about it. Like, it's an incredible place. So I was there with Jay. He goes back to the bathroom. He comes back. His face is like white. And I'm like, he's like, I didn't go. And I was like, what? And he's like, there's literally an old man whipped it out in the hallway and just peed in the corner outside the 2 restrooms. And I'm like, were they full? Was it like an emergency? He's like, no. I'm like, what are you talking about? So he's like, it's that guy. It's that guy. He like points to him. He goes down and I'm like watching this man to see if he's like not mentally there. Oh, he has a full conversation with his son. He's asking about his life. They're talking about, I'm like, you're disgusting. You just went and pissed in a hall for what reason? At a restaurant, no less. Anyway, so I can actually see that. Okay. Hi, the last night of the cruise, I went down to change the credit card on file for the shipboard charges. Apart from the usual line of people demanding that the prepaid gratuities be removed, people do that. That's like part of a cruise. Actually, a lot of people don't know that. So it's usually $18 per person per day. So like you pay for your cruise, you pay for your excursions, you pay for your flights, all that. And then you get a bill at the end and it's $18 per person per day. And that's like split up among the crew, I hope. But you're also supposed to tip extra more than that anyway. Okay, so the guy was completely losing his shit on a poor lady behind the counter. Between himself and his party, they had managed to spend more than $4,000 at Starbucks, and he was absolutely furious over it. He was demanding to talk to everybody up to the captain. Can you imagine? The captain's like, hey, so I don't have literally anything to do with this, and my job is to keep this afloat and keep you guys safe, so handle it elsewhere. Okay, $4,000 at Starbucks. How big was his party? 150 people? Because what are you talking about? Like, even on a 7-day cruise, like, how many Starbucks could you get a day? I mean, I'm not going to answer for myself because I could probably spend $4K, but let's say you get 2 Starbucks a day. The cruise ship Starbucks isn't that much more expensive anyway than like a regular one. So let's say it's like $10 per coffee and you get 2 to 3 a day, $30 a day. How is this adding up to 4,000? I would like to know. Okay, and also, what do you mean you're demanding it back? Like, you can see the prices when you go there. It's not some magical thing where you're like, here, charge a Frappuccino back to my room. Like, you sign the receipt exactly for what you spent, so you know. Okay, family demanded the waitress cut up their child's dinner upon serving it to her at their table. She had chicken strips, etc. almost every night, but they insisted the waitress cut them up for her. Like, this isn't your kid's nanny, okay? Her job is to bring the food to the table, take it away from the table, and do the drinks. That is ridiculous. Oh my gosh. Okay. In 2023, my husband and I went with 2 of his guy friends on a cruise. We had a great time, but on our second to last night, we noticed our friend was missing. He refused to get the Wi-Fi package, so we couldn't contact him. We assumed he was hanging out with people, but once we woke up and he was still gone, we got worried. Eventually, he did get back, and he said he had he had group sex with some people in their cabin. We were like, no way, until he introduced us to them. He met the group, I assume a group of swingers, at the nightclub, and they just took him in. Just picked up a stray. They were like, you seem pretty fun. We were all worried about him for hours. Yikes. Gross. Nasty. No. Okay, on our last cruise through Norwegian, our cabin... No. On our last cruise through Norwegian, our cabin was infested with flies. Biting flies. Okay, if this happened to me, I'm jumping overboard. I'll take my chances with the sharks because I would rather be bit by a shark than bit by a million disgusting flies. Also, I have never encountered any fly, bug, spider, anything in these. And I think they're probably like fully fumigating them in between. I don't even know how this would happen. And also, what do you mean? They said we were killing 10 plus flies every time we came back to the room. Like, no, you need to go demand another room, and that's crazy. They were coming out of the vents. It was maddening. You couldn't have exposed skin without one landing on you. By the second day, I find out there's stable flies, which are extra annoying because 1, they cut, not bite the skin, and 2, they land and sit when you start swatting at them. I got very good at spotting them, and my spouse got good at snapping them with a hand towel. By the 3rd day, I was leaving collections of dead fly corpses and empty water glasses for the cabin steward. On the 4th day, maintenance took apart the HVAC wall panel. On the 4th day? What do you mean? Took apart the HVAC wall panel in the hall and did a deep clean of all the filters, solved the problem, but I still jumped awake every night and every time something tickled my skin for the rest of the voyage. Oh, no. Oh my God. Oh, this is a long story. Okay. A few months ago, we were on the Carnival Mardi Gras and our cabin was on the Lido deck. They were tucked away with only an entrance near the door by the corner by the elevators. We were on the second cabin at the end before you rounded a corner and there aren't many rooms, so hardly no foot traffic. For 9 days, the only person we ever, 9-day cruise, I can't even imagine. That's too long. For 9 days, the only person we ever saw in the hallway was our steward. On the last day, we were walking back from eating when this guy suddenly tried to strike up a conversation. He seemed sober, maybe just overly friendly, but he would not take the hint that we weren't interested. We were polite at first, then distant, then flat out tried to walk away. He matched our pace, talking the whole time, asking if we wanted to go to the comedy club, the pool, paint the town red, etc. For context, we're middle-aged lesbians, and we're clear to him we were a couple. It didn't seem like he was hitting on us, just desperate for company. Eventually, we ditched him at the elevator, and my partner and I went to the casino and headed to the cabin alone. As I got closer to our door, I had this weird skin-crawly instinct to look behind me. Every girl knows this feeling. And when I turned around toward the hallway door, I see the top of his head duck out of sight. He was peeking around the corner watching me. I panicked a little and walked past our cabin to try and loop around, but didn't realize I was heading to a dead end. I waited a minute thinking maybe he'd leave. When I came back around the corner, he was still there, ducking his head back again. Now we're just standing there near my door and him halfway through the doorway, just staring at each other like two weirdos in a standoff. I finally got up the nerve to tell him to leave. He didn't move, just stared. I told him again, but still nothing, just staring. So I did what any normal person would do when the words fail and I started yelling. Not actual words, just a loud, ah, until a very confused guest peeked their head out the door and I said, "Can you call security?" Meanwhile, this dude just kept standing there staring. This after not shutting up earlier. Security showed up and tried to talk to him, and he wouldn't respond, wouldn't speak at all. He just stood there completely blank like he ran out of batteries. Eventually, they escorted him away. No clue what happened to him, but it was hands down the weirdest, most unsettling interaction I've ever had on a cruise. That's like the Ruby Frankie thing, like the most annoying thing ever. The cops get him, and they're like, it's like, come on, you were being a pervert 2 minutes ago. Knock it off. Okay, our very first cruise on Norwegian, and we were young and naive. We went on a powerboat ride with snorkeling. The captain let very drunk, attractive women drive the boat. We're going very, very fast. We almost hit another boat, and then later we did hit a dock. It was insane. That is so crazy that you're going to put everyone's lives at risk. I love how you were like very drunk and also very attractive. Okay. Back when I was in middle school, we went on a cruise for summer vacation. All of us kids spent all day running around on our own, mostly people watching and hanging out by the pool. On the deck below the pool, there were viewing windows into it, kind of like an aquarium, but filled with people. One day, there was this old guy, probably in his 40s, floating around in there. I love how you're like, old guy, probably in his 40s. I'll be 40 in like a year and a half. So he said, probably floating around in there. And then he pulled it out. Just started wanking away as casually as could be. At the time, we all laughed and giggled being kids, didn't really understand how disturbing what was happening really was. Whacking it in front of children? No. Gosh, I hate that. Oh, those people want to like shame and embarrass you. I mean, I don't know, the kid factor could be something even more sinister, but like, I feel like you have to like humiliate them back. Like if anyone ever does that, you have to be like, oh my gosh, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Just start like cackling hysterically. I'm like, look, Bella, it's a worm. It's a worm from Twilight. No, seriously though, that's so gross. Ugh. Yeah, you got to shame those people right back because they have some weird kink about like embarrassing and shaming you and forcing you. So no, not going to get away with that. Okay, ready? I was in line at the buffet. A woman cut in front with her used plate of food and put the extra food back on the platter because she said it should not go to waste. I was shocked. Needless to say, I told the chef what happened and that they had to replace the trays of food. Who would think this is okay? That is so disgusting. You're literally like, I'm gonna waste. You're like, nobody wants to eat your trash, lady. Okay, a Carnival agent told us a great story about a DJ that got drunk and got on the ship's intercom at 3 a.m. and announced abandon ship order to everyone. Pandemonium ensued. They now limit who has access to that system. Can you imagine waking up to that? They're like, abandoned ship. You'd be like, what do you mean abandoned ship? Where do I go? That'd be so crazy. Okay, crew life. I told you about that. Sorry. Okay, so, here was the weird safety rules, okay? So if someone falls overboard, the ship cannot legally turn around immediately in most situations without Coast Guard approval. Until recently, most ships didn't have automatic man overboard detection systems, and cruise ships can legally fly flags of convenience from countries they never visit, affecting labor laws. Crimes and jurisdiction. Crimes in international waters can fall into a legal gray area, and sometimes no country has clear authority. Evidence can literally be washed away within minutes, and some crimes are reported hours after they happen, making investigations harder. Cruises, this one's about the cabins and the designs. Cruise cabins are designed with rounded corners so you don't bruise yourself in rough seas. The toilets use vacuum suction, so it's real and powerful, and balcony railings are designed to discourage climbing, but alcohol defeats architecture. Health and hygiene. Cruise ships must pass unannounced CDC inspections. Food temperatures are logged every 30 minutes, and sick passengers can be confined to their cabin and monitored remotely. I think we all heard about the one when there was the COVID one, and then there was the one with the norovirus, and those people literally had to stay on that cruise confined to their room for like days at a time. And imagine if you're in a room without a balcony. Like when you go to book, it like tells you could literally be in a room with no window, no porthole, like no balcony. There's some that don't even have a window. Like that would make me insane. Absolutely not. So claustrophobic. I will say it's so rare that people get sick from the food on a cruise because like if they had some crazy foodborne illness outbreak, number one, they're going to get sued. Number two, that would affect so many passengers, and it would be like, so they really are super intense about that, at least. They said new cruise ships with the AI and tech track food waste and predict how much food to cook, and they can track crowds in real time to reduce lines at buffets and shows, and facial recognition is used for boarding and security. Now, dark but true. Falling overboard is rare, but survival depends heavily on the time of day, water temperature, and the detection speed. Duh. Many accidental deaths at sea are never fully explained, and the ocean hides evidence better than any crime scene on land, which is true. So this one is pretty crazy, like this factoid. So I have to find you the full thing of it, though. Where is that? I think it was on my phone. Hang on 1 second, because you guys are going to die. Okay, so the money stuff. The cheapest cruise fares can be under $100, but the most expensive cruise costs over $800,000. I have to read you this thing I found. It was so nuts. And yes, I said $800,000. Okay, are you ready? Okay, where is it? Sorry about this, guys. Okay. So the $99 to $129 per person are for short sailings. You can get those on Carnival, MSC, or Royal Caribbean. Those are usually like 3 to 4 night trips, but obviously there's a lot of like extra costs added up after. And then the world's most expensive cruise is $800,000. So it says that one's called the Regent Seven Seas World of Splendor. So up to $839,000 per person for a 140-night world cruise with virtually everything included: flights, excursions, drinks, Wi-Fi, specialty dining, laundry, and unlimited shore tours. Now, I don't even know. I mean, I pack for every vacation like it's a 140-day world cruise, but like literally, how would you pack for that? Like, pick up, and like, what are you going to do with all the stuff you get? You like pick up stuff in other countries, or you buy clothes in other countries. And I'm just like, only one of our cruises has had like kind of yucky waters, because I'm like pretty nauseous person. Like I get car sick, I get all those. I've never gotten sick on a cruise ever. But the ones where you're like, the ship's rocking quite a bit, it takes like a week. I'm not kidding. You'll get home and you're like walking down the hall and start walking sideways. Like you feel like you're still, you literally haven't got your sea legs back, or whatever they call it. That's a real thing. And I'm like, 140-night cruise? Number one, sounds like my nightmare. Those rooms better be massive. I guess they would have to be for $800,000 a person. But like, and then they're like, virtually everything is included. Not virtually everything. They're like nickel and diming you on some stuff. Like, I don't even know what that would mean, but I thought that was insane. I had no idea they were that expensive, because I had looked up like a Viking cruise before. I don't know if you guys have seen those. The Viking ships are like more like river cruisy, and they're much smaller, and they're very like 4-star resort at sea. But those can be like, gosh, I think it was like $18,000 to $20,000 a person, and I thought that was bad. I just don't know who has $839 per person and wants to do a 140-day world cruise, but I could be wrong. Okay, so it said cruise lines make most of their profit from the onboard spending, not ticket sales. So the alcohol packages are priced, so most people like slightly overpay for that. And we never do the alcohol packages because, number one, it's like an insane price. And I'm like, if you just buy a glass of wine with dinner every night, or like a shot of tequila here or there, it's never going to add up to what it is. And what's crazy is, like, if you're sober and your spouse isn't, they don't allow that. You both have to buy a alcohol package, even if the other adult isn't drinking, because they assume you're going to be like sneaking it or sharing drinks with them, and they don't have like the manpower to like be regulating that. So you both have to buy a drink package, and it's like, why would I do that? So yeah, like we'll just buy a glass of wine here or there. And again, it's like the same as like the Starbucks thing. Like maybe it's a couple bucks more for a glass of wine, or, pina colada or whatever, but it's never going to add up. If you're having like even 1 to 2 drinks a day per person, you don't need the alcohol package. That's crazy. And also, who's getting like smashed on a cruise? Like, that would be the worst place to be hungover and sick. Okay, so that's it for today's voyage. Remember, what happens at sea always comes back to shore. Rate, review, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on the I totally botched that. Can I do it again? That's it for today's voyage. Remember, what happens at sea always comes back to shore. Rate, review, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Scandalous Sailing. Chat soon, babes.